Hi, I'm Brandon Ritter, and this is my video presentation for German 88. In this video, I want to examine the role of intergenerational conversation in Vergangenheitsbewältigung, or coming to terms with the past. Specifically, I want to look at two articles that relate the two concepts. First, I want to discuss an article written for The Economist called The Third Reich Revisited, The War Generation. The article describes a German television miniseries whose title translates to Our Mothers, Our Fathers. The miniseries focuses on 5 young German friends and their service in the German army from 1941 to 1945. The article explains that while Schindler's List, Downfall, and other depictions of World War II had passing interest in Germany, nothing has produced the same reaction as Our Mothers, Our Fathers. This show has led to Germans asking tough questions to their grandparents who were alive during the Nazi regime. They say that it's less about young Germans sharing the burden of collective guilt, and it's more about a collective responsibility to understand what happened from 1933 to 1945. This is related to the special path theory mentioned in class. Germans feel to a certain extent that their nation is capable of repeating the atrocities of the past, and they must be on guard against such a repetition of the past. There is a sense that there is a responsibility not just of Germany as a state, but for each individual German to do their part to understand what happened and how it can be avoided. And that is a responsibility that will never pass away, or in the words of a producer from the miniseries, it's never over. For a more in-depth look at what a conversation between a curious young German and his or her grandparent would look like, I want to turn to an article written by David Crossland for Der Spiegel called The Holocaust is German Family History. In this article, Crossland details the experience of Moritz Pfeiffer, a German historian who asked his granddad about what he did in World War II and then fact-checked the testimony. Pfeiffer claims that because at least 20 million Germans knew about the Holocaust while it was happening, and over 10 million fought on the Eastern Front in what Crossland calls, quote, a war of annihilation that targeted civilians from the start, end quote, the atrocities of the Third Reich are part of German family histories, whether they like it or not. In the interviews he conducted, Pfeiffer found that his grandfather was willing to share for 2 reasons. First, in his old age, he perceived a great distance between the events of the Second World War and his current life. Second, he was engaging in denial, playing down his role in order to lessen his responsibility. In his mind, he had nothing to fear by sharing because he was in denial about what had actually happened. Pfeiffer's rigorous fact-checking of his grandfather's testimony led to the publication of a book, My Grandfather in the War, 1939 to 1945. While the details of the testimony are interesting, a broad survey of Pfeiffer's findings will serve our purposes here. In short, Pfeiffer found that his grandfather was unwilling or unable to face up to and admit what he had done during the war. It is key to note that even though Pfeiffer spent significant effort fact-checking the testimony, his main goal was not to expose his grandfather or to pass judgment. It was to understand. And the reason why Pfeiffer and many other young Germans feel they have a responsibility to facilitate intergenerational conversation is to understand. On some level, many Germans still buy into the idea of the special path. They feel like they need to understand the people who allowed the Nazis to gain power in order to avoid repetition of the past. Moritz Pfeiffer puts it this way. Dealing with one's family history in the Nazi period in an open, factual, and self-critical way is an important contribution to accepting democracy and avoiding a repeat of what happened between 1933 and 1945. Young, inquisitive Germans are placing a high priority on getting answers from generations before them. The fight to understand and remember is never over, and that is how they respond to what Adorno called the categorical imperative of never again.